They moved like smoke through moonlit corridors. They killed without sound, disappeared without trace, and became legends without ever seeking glory. The ninja, Japan's shadow warriors, have haunted our imagination for centuries, but how much of what we believe is actually true? Tonight, you're about to discover the real story behind history's most mysterious warriors. From their birth in the blood-soaked mountains of feudal Japan to their transformation into Hollywood superheroes, this is the complete journey of the ninja, stripped of myth, rebuilt with fact, and told like never before. But before we step into the shadows together, I need you to do 3 things. First, hit that subscribe button. This channel is dedicated to uncovering history's hidden truths, and your subscription helps us bring more deep-dive documentaries like this one to life. Second, smash the like button if you're ready to separate ninja fact from ninja fiction. Your likes tell YouTube that real history matters, and they help this video reach others who crave authentic storytelling. Third, drop a comment right now telling me what city you're watching from. Are you in Tokyo, New York, São Paulo, London? I want to see how far across the globe these shadow warriors have reached. Let's build a worldwide community of history seekers. Over the next 3 hours, we'll climb the hidden mountains where ninja clans were forged, examine their actual weapons and techniques, witness their greatest battles, and trace their evolution from feared assassins to pop culture icons. This isn't just history. It's a journey through shadows, secrets, and the immortal power of legend. Now, let the darkness speak. To understand the ninja, you must first understand chaos. Not the romantic chaos of Hollywood films, but the grinding, blood-soaked chaos of a nation tearing itself apart. 15th century Japan was a fractured land, where over 100 feudal lords, known as daimyo, clawed at each other's throats for territory, power, and survival. The country burned with constant warfare during what historians call the Sangoku period, the age of warring states, and in that fire, something new was forged. Traditional samurai warfare, with its codes of honor and face-to-face combat, proved insufficient for this new reality. Victory required more than courage and sword skill. It demanded information, deception, and the willingness to strike from the shadows. The samurai followed Bushido, a rigid code that emphasized loyalty, honor, and dying with dignity. But honor doesn't win wars when your enemy knows your every move, when your supply lines burn in the night, when your castle plans are sold before the foundation is laid. The roots of covert warfare in Japan stretched back centuries earlier to the Heian period of the 8th and 9th centuries, when groups of outlaws and mountain ascetics began forming their own independent communities in remote regions. These early groups were rough bands of survivors, peasants, farmers, and even dishonored samurai, who learned to use terrain, stealth, and unconventional tactics to defend themselves against more powerful enemies. Some scholars point to the Yamabushi, mountain-dwelling Buddhist monks who practiced esoteric rituals and martial arts, as one possible origin of what would become ninja techniques. But the true emergence of the shinobi, those who endure, came during the chaos of the Sengoku period. As warfare intensified, feudal lords realized that intelligence gathering had become as crucial as military strength. A daimyo needed to know the layout of enemy castles, the condition of rival food supplies, troop movements, political alliances, and the location of hidden weaknesses. Traditional samurai, bound by codes of honor and open combat, were ill-suited for such work. This created a demand for specialists, men who could infiltrate enemy territory, gather information, sabotage supply lines, and return unseen. These specialists didn't come from the noble samurai class. They emerged from the lower rungs of feudal society, farmers, merchants, craftsmen, and those who lived in the mountainous regions far from the centers of power. In the provinces of Iga and Koga, nestled in the rugged mountains of central Honshu, communities of jisamurai, elite peasant warriors, formed defensive leagues to resist outside authority. These regions, isolated by treacherous terrain and thick forests, developed their own military traditions free from samurai codes. The geography was their greatest ally. Steep valleys, dense forests, and fog-choked mountain passes provided natural protection and ideal training grounds for unconventional warfare. These communities learned to move silently through terrain that would break conventional armies, to disappear into landscapes they knew intimately, to turn their disadvantage in numbers and equipment into an advantage through surprise, deception, and intimate knowledge of their environment. By the height of the Sengoku period, the role of shinobi had diversified and professionalized. They served as kancho, spies who gathered intelligence deep in enemy territory. They worked as scouts who surveyed terrain and enemy positions before major battles. They became saboteurs, destroying fortifications, poisoning wells, and spreading misinformation to weaken adversaries before confrontation. And yes, sometimes they were assassins. Though this was far less common than popular culture suggests, the daimyo hired these shadow warriors not for their loyalty, but for their results. Ninja families began organizing into larger guilds with distinct territories, hierarchies, and specializations. They passed their techniques down through generations, creating schools of ninjutsu, the art of stealth, that would become legendary. Training began in childhood and encompassed far more than combat. Disguise, acting, psychology, survival skills, climbing, swimming, escape techniques, and the creation of specialized tools and weapons. But as these shadow warriors grew in skill and reputation, they also attracted attention from the powerful lords they had once resisted. When the warlord Oda Nobunaga decided to crush the independent ninja strongholds of Iga, he sent an overwhelming force into the mountains. The battle that followed would test whether shadows could stand against an army and whether the ninja would survive to see another generation. In those mountain passes, as Nobunaga's soldiers advanced, something waited in the darkness. Something that had learned to turn weakness into strength, isolation into power, and fear into a weapon sharper than any blade. The mountains of Iga and Koga were not like other places in feudal Japan. While the rest of the nation bowed to powerful warlords and rigid hierarchies, these remote provinces remained fiercely independent, shrouded in mist and legend. Here, among steep valleys and ancient forests, two communities would perfect the art of shadow warfare and become synonymous with the very word ninja. Iga province sat in the heart of the Ki Peninsula, surrounded by mountains so treacherous that armies avoided them. Koga, located in nearby Omi province, shared similar geography, rugged terrain that made conventional military campaigns nearly impossible. This isolation wasn't just physical, it was political. Both regions existed in a power vacuum, too remote for powerful daimyo to control effectively, yet close enough to major trade routes to remain economically viable. In this unique space, something remarkable developed. Communities governed not by feudal lords but by councils of jisamurai families who had learned to survive through collective defense and unconventional warfare. The people of Iga and Koga weren't originally ninjas in the sense we understand today. They were farmers, monks, minor samurai, and craftsmen who had been pushed to the margins of society. But necessity bred innovation. When bandits raided their villages, they learned to fight back using ambushes and terrain advantages. When larger armies threatened, they developed early warning systems using fire signals and messenger networks that could alert entire valleys in minutes. When survival demanded it, they learned to move silently through forests at night, to read tracks and signs invisible to outsiders, to turn their intimate knowledge of the land into an unbeatable tactical advantage. Over generations, these survival skills evolved into systematic martial traditions. Families began specializing in different aspects of covert warfare. Some became experts in taijutsu, unarmed combat techniques designed for close-quarters fighting and silent killing. Others mastered kyaku jutsu, the art of fire and explosives, creating smoke bombs, fire arrows, and primitive grenades. Still others focused on henso jutsu, the art of disguise and impersonation, learning to convincingly pose as monks, merchants, entertainers, or even samurai. The Iga region eventually organized into 3 main confederations, controlling 53 families, while Koga developed a council system representing 53 family groups across its territory. These weren't centralized organizations with single leaders, but rather loose alliances that could mobilize quickly when threatened. This decentralized structure made them nearly impossible to destroy through conventional military means. Cut off one head, and 50 more remained. What truly set Iga and Koga apart was their philosophy of warfare. While samurai valued honorable death in battle, the ninja of these regions valued survival and mission success above all else. They had no shame in retreat, no dishonor in deception, no code preventing them from using whatever methods worked. This pragmatism made them invaluable to daimyo, who needed results rather than glory. By the height of the Sangoku period, both Iga and Koga ninja were being hired across Japan for espionage, sabotage, and specialized military operations, but their independence couldn't last forever. As Japan's warring states began consolidating under powerful warlords, these autonomous mountain communities became intolerable anomalies. The warlord Oda Nobunaga, perhaps the most ruthless military leader of the era, viewed Iga's independence as both an insult and a threat. In 1579, he sent his son Nobukatsu with an army to subjugate the province. The eager ninja, vastly outnumbered, used every trick in their arsenal: night raids, ambushes, psychological warfare, and intimate knowledge of mountain passes to shatter the invading force and send Nobukatsu retreating in humiliation. Nobunaga did not forgive such defeats. 2 years later, in 1581, he returned with an overwhelming force of over 40,000 soldiers, 10 times the number of fighters Iga could muster. This time, there would be no clever ambush that could turn the tide. The ninja fought with desperate courage, but sheer numbers crushed their resistance. Villages burned, families were slaughtered, the Iga confederations were systematically destroyed. Yet even in destruction, the ninja displayed their ultimate skill: survival. Many escaped through secret mountain routes, scattering across Japan to offer their services to other lords. Some found their way to Tokugawa Ieyasu, a rising warlord who recognized their value. Koga, witnessing Iga's fate, chose pragmatism over pride and allied with powerful daimyo before they too could be crushed. The mountain strongholds were broken, but the knowledge survived. And soon, that knowledge would be tested in the greatest power struggle Japan had ever seen, a struggle where a single ninja's actions might determine who would rule an empire. Forget everything the movies taught you. Real ninja training wasn't about mystical meditation or supernatural powers. It was brutal, methodical, and began when you were barely old enough to walk. In the mountain villages of Iga and Koga, children born into ninja families entered a world where survival depended on mastering skills most people never dreamed existed. Training started around age 5 or 6, not with weapons, but with the fundamentals that would keep you alive in hostile territory. Young trainees called genin learned to move silently through forests, placing each foot deliberately to avoid snapping twigs or rustling leaves. They practiced controlling their breathing, slowing their heartbeat, remaining motionless for hours in uncomfortable positions. These weren't games, they were survival exercises that would later mean the difference between completing a mission and dying in an enemy castle. Physical conditioning pushed the limits of human endurance. Children ran through mountain trails carrying weighted packs, building stamina that would allow them to travel dozens of miles through rough terrain without rest. They learned to scale walls and cliffs using minimal equipment, sometimes just their fingers and toes, other times with simple tools like kunai, metal spikes that could be driven into wood or between stones. One famous training method involved planting a hemp seed and having the child jump over the sprouting plant every day. As the plant grew taller, so did the child's jumping ability, eventually allowing them to leap over walls that would stop ordinary soldiers. Swimming and breath control were essential skills. Ninja trainees learned to swim silently, moving through water without creating ripples that might alert sentries. They practiced breathing through hollow reeds while submerged, staying underwater for extended periods to avoid detection or cross moats surrounding enemy fortifications. Some could reportedly hold their breath for several minutes, a skill developed through years of disciplined practice. But physical prowess meant nothing without mental discipline. Ninja training emphasized psychological manipulation, deception, and what we might today call social engineering. Trainees learned to speak in different regional dialects, allowing them to pose convincingly as travelers from distant provinces. They studied human behavior, learning to read body language, detect lies, and exploit psychological weaknesses. The art of hensojutsu, disguise and impersonation, required understanding not just how different people looked, but how they moved, spoke, and thought. Each ninja was expected to master 7 basic disguises that could be adopted at a moment's notice: monk, merchant, entertainer, farmer, craftsman, outcast, and warrior. This wasn't simply wearing different clothes, it meant inhabiting entirely different personas, with appropriate knowledge, mannerisms, and backgrounds that could withstand scrutiny. A ninja disguised as a traveling merchant needed to know trade routes, prices, and products well enough to fool actual merchants. One posing as a monk required familiarity with Buddhist scriptures and rituals. Combat training, contrary to popular belief, focused on practical effectiveness rather than flashy techniques. Ninja learned taijutsu, unarmed combat designed for close-quarters fighting and silent killing. They trained with swords, but ninja sword techniques emphasized quick draws and short, efficient strikes rather than the formal dueling styles of samurai. They mastered staff fighting, spear work, and the use of improvised weapons, because a ninja might need to fight with whatever tools were available. Specialized skills separated experienced ninja from novices. Advanced trainees learned kyakujutsu, the dangerous art of mixing gunpowder, creating smoke bombs, fire arrows, and small explosive devices. They studied poisons, which plants killed, which paralyzed, which created symptoms that mimicked natural illness. They learned to pick locks, forge documents, and crack simple codes. Some specialized in meteorology, using their understanding of weather patterns to predict fog banks or storms that would provide cover for operations. The training hierarchy created a clear path of advancement. Young Genin executed simple tasks under supervision. Mid-level Chunin led missions and trained the next generation. Elite Jonin planned operations and maintained the strategic knowledge that made entire ninja clans effective. This system ensured that even if operatives died in the field, their techniques and knowledge survived within the family structure. By the time a ninja completed their training, typically in their early 20s, they had become something unique in feudal Japan. Warriors who valued mission success over personal glory, survival over honorable death, and practical skill over rigid tradition. They were athletes, actors, psychologists, chemists, and killers, rolled into one deadly package. But all the training in the world meant nothing without the right tools. And the ninja arsenal contained weapons that would make them legendary. Some real, some exaggerated, and some far stranger than fiction ever imagined. Hollywood wants you to believe ninja were walking armories bristling with exotic weapons. The truth was far more practical and far more deadly. Every tool in a ninja's arsenal served multiple purposes, could be concealed easily, and often looked like something completely ordinary. A ninja's greatest weapon wasn't steel or gunpowder. It was versatility disguised as innocence. Take the shuriken, perhaps the most famous ninja weapon in popular imagination. Movies show them as perfectly balanced throwing stars, capable of killing with pinpoint accuracy from impossible distances. Reality was messier and more interesting. Historical shuriken came in dozens of designs, some star-shaped, others like flat needles or spikes, but their primary purpose wasn't assassination. Ninja used shuriken to distract guards, create openings in close combat, or delay pursuers while escaping. They were weapons of opportunity, not primary arms. Some ninja even coated them with feces or plant toxins, turning minor wounds into infections that could incapacitate targets days later. The ninja sword, or ninjato, also differs significantly from its cinematic portrayal. While samurai carried long, curved katana, designed for formal dueling, ninja swords were shorter, straighter, and far more utilitarian. The straight blade worked better for stabbing through gaps in armor or sliding between walls and obstacles. The scabbard itself became a tool. Ninja used them as snorkels while hiding underwater, as stepping platforms to scale walls, or as blowgun tubes to deliver poisoned darts. Nothing was single-purpose. Everything adapted. Perhaps no weapon better embodied ninja philosophy than the kusarigama, a farmer's sickle attached to a long chain with a weighted ball at the end. This weapon exemplified the ninja approach. Take something ordinary, something that wouldn't raise suspicion if discovered, and transform it into a devastatingly effective combat tool. The weighted chain could entangle an opponent's weapon or limbs from a distance, while the sickle finished the job at close range. Historical records confirm that kusarigama masters like Shishido Baiken terrorized samurai with this seemingly humble farm implement, at least until the legendary Miyamoto Musashi defeated Baiken by stepping inside the chain's range and using a hidden knife. But ninja excelled most in tools that didn't look like weapons at all. The kunai, often depicted as throwing knives in games and movies, were actually multifunctional digging and climbing tools. Ninja used them to create handholds in walls, pry open doors, dig under barriers, or as improvised weapons when necessary. Their innocent appearance as common implements meant they could be carried openly without arousing suspicion. Espionage equipment showed similar practical genius. Ninja employed mizugumo, water spiders, circular floats attached to their feet for crossing moats, though historical evidence suggests these worked better in propaganda than practice. More reliable were inflatable animal bladders used as flotation devices, or hollow bamboo tubes for breathing while submerged. They carried a shiko, spiked climbing claws that strapped to hands and feet for scaling castle walls. Some tools specifically aided intelligence gathering, portable writing kits hidden in walking sticks, charcoal and paper for making rubbings of important documents, and listening tubes pressed against walls or buried underground to eavesdrop on conversations in adjacent rooms. Chemistry and pyrotechnics gave ninja their most spectacular advantages. They created metsubushi, blinding powders made from ash, ground pepper, or irritating plant materials thrown into opponents' faces during combat or escape. Smoke bombs using gunpowder and various chemicals generated thick, concealing clouds that allowed ninja to vanish during confrontations. These weren't magic tricks, they were chemistry deployed with tactical precision. Some ninja even developed primitive grenades, hollow eggs or bamboo segments filled with gunpowder and shrapnel, sealed with wax, and hurled into enemy formations. Disguise equipment often proved more valuable than weapons. Ninja carried multiple sets of clothing that could transform their appearance in seconds. Monks' robes, merchants' garments, farmers' clothing. They used theatrical makeup derived from plant dyes and ash to alter their facial features. Some carried fake documents and identification papers forged with impressive skill. The goal wasn't just to look different, but to become someone else entirely, someone who belonged precisely where the ninja had no right to be. Yet for all their tools and techniques, ninja understood something modern special operations forces rediscover constantly. The best weapon is the one your enemy never sees coming. A ninja's true arsenal existed in the space between what appeared harmless and what proved lethal, between the expected and the devastating. And sometimes the deadliest weapon wasn't a blade or bomb at all. Sometimes it was simply a well-told lie delivered by someone you never suspected. Which raises a darker question. If a ninja could become anyone, how would you ever know you'd met one? The greatest ninja trick wasn't disappearing in a cloud of smoke. It was standing directly in front of you, having a conversation, earning your trust and leaving you convinced you'd never met a spy at all. While Hollywood obsesses over combat and acrobatics, real ninja understood something far more powerful. The human mind is easier to fool than any locked door, and a well-crafted lie travels further than any blade. The art of hensojutsu, transformation through disguise, formed the cornerstone of ninja deception. But this wasn't simply wearing different clothing. A ninja preparing to infiltrate an enemy castle as a traveling monk spent weeks or months beforehand studying Buddhist scriptures, learning proper prayers, memorizing monastery locations, and adopting the mannerisms and speech patterns of genuine clergy. They understood that disguise meant becoming someone else at every level: physical, verbal, and psychological. Historical texts describe 7 primary disguises that ninja mastered: the traveling monk, the wandering merchant, the itinerant entertainer, the common farmer, the craftsman, the outcast beggar, and occasionally the low-ranking warrior. Each role provided different access and advantages. Monks could travel freely and ask questions without arousing suspicion. Merchants had legitimate reasons to visit castles and observe defenses. Entertainers gained entry to celebrations where important conversations happened. Beggars were invisible to the powerful, free to observe without being observed in return. Some of the most effective ninja were women, kunoichi, who exploited feudal society's underestimation of female capability. They infiltrated as servants, dancers, concubines, or wet nurses, roles that placed them intimately close to powerful men while remaining beneath suspicion. They kunoichi, working as a household servant, might spend years in an enemy lord's home, learning his routines, his weaknesses, his secrets, all while appearing as nothing more than part of the household furniture. Behind gentle smiles and subservient bows, they gathered intelligence that would determine the outcomes of wars. Psychological manipulation extended beyond simple disguise into sophisticated operations we might today recognize as social engineering. Ninja spread carefully crafted rumors designed to create paranoia, distrust, and division within enemy ranks. They planted false intelligence where it would be discovered, leading opponents to make catastrophic strategic errors based on information they believed they had cleverly obtained through their own spying. Some ninja specialized in gojo goyoku, exploiting the 5 human weaknesses of anger, fear, sympathy, greed, and vanity to manipulate targets into betraying themselves. Visual deception played crucial tactical roles during operations. Ninja wore specialized footwear, tengugeta, wooden sandals carved to leave backwards footprints or prints resembling animal tracks, confusing anyone attempting to follow their trail. Some carried multiple pairs that created different tracking patterns, making pursuers believe they were following multiple people or heading in opposite directions. These weren't magical tricks, but practical applications of misdirection that bought precious time during escapes. The theatrical use of fire and explosives amplified psychological impact beyond their actual destructive power. A small explosive device detonated at the right moment created confusion far exceeding its physical damage. Smoke bombs weren't primarily escape tools, though they served that purpose, but psychological weapons that triggered panic and disorientation, turning organized defenses into chaos. Ninja understood that what people believed was happening often mattered more than reality itself. One particularly sophisticated technique involved the deliberate creation of false ninja myths that served operational purposes. Some ninja clans encouraged stories about supernatural powers, walking on water, turning invisible, shape-shifting, because fear of the impossible proved more paralyzing than fear of skilled humans. Guards who believed they faced supernatural opponents became demoralized and prone to panic. Defenders who thought ninja possessed magic might abandon posts that could have been held against ordinary infiltrators. The ninja didn't discourage such tales, they weaponized them. Even assassination, when it occurred, favored psychological manipulation over direct violence. Poison delivered through food or drink avoided confrontation entirely, while making deaths appear natural. Some ninja specialized in creating accidents, loosening stone steps, weakening support beams, tampering with horses, that killed without leaving evidence of murder. The message wasn't just that the target died, it was that death could come from anywhere, at any time, through anyone. Trust became impossible. Paranoia became epidemic. The line between ninja and actor often blurred beyond recognition. Both professions required studying human behavior, adopting convincing personas, and manipulating emotions. The difference was stakes. An actor's failed performance earned poor reviews. A ninja's meant torture and execution. But all the disguises and deception in the world meant nothing if you couldn't escape when the mask finally slipped. And in the blood-soaked battlefields, where ninja truly proved their worth, survival meant more than clever tricks. It meant knowing exactly when to vanish, when to strike, and when to change the course of history itself. Because somewhere in the chaos of Japan's greatest conflicts, ninja weren't just watching from the shadows, they were deciding who would win. History remembers the generals, the samurai lords, and the grand strategies. But behind many of Japan's most decisive moments, invisible hands moved in the darkness, tilting the balance when no one was watching. These weren't legends or folklore. These were documented operations where ninja changed the course of wars, toppled dynasties, and proved that sometimes the greatest victories happen before the battle even begins. One of the earliest recorded ninja operations occurred in 1487 during the siege of Magari Castle. The fortress, considered impregnable due to its position and defenses, had withstood conventional assault for months. The attacking lord hired ninja from Iga, who studied the castle for weeks, noting guard rotations, water sources, and structural weaknesses. On a moonless night, they infiltrated through the castle's sewage system, an entrance no samurai would have considered using due to the dishonor. Once inside, they opened the gates from within, set fires in strategic locations to create chaos, and assassinated key commanders before defenders could organize resistance. By dawn, the impregnable fortress had fallen without a major battle. But the most famous ninja operations revolved around Japan's greatest power struggle, the rise of Tokugawa Ieyasu, the man who would eventually unify the nation and establish a shogunate that lasted over 250 years. Ieyasu understood ninja value better than any of his contemporaries, and his relationship with the Koga and Iga survivors would prove decisive at critical moments. In 1582, following the shocking assassination of Oda Nobunaga, Ieyasu found himself stranded in hostile territory with only a small group of retainers. His position was desperate. Rival lords controlled every route back to his home province, and assassins hunted him actively. According to historical accounts, ninja from Iga and Koga, some of whom Ieyasu had previously aided after Nobunaga's destruction of their homeland, orchestrated one of history's most remarkable escape operations. They guided Ieyasu through secret mountain paths, used their network of contacts to secure safe houses, created diversions to mislead pursuers, and smuggled him across enemy territories disguised as a commoner. This journey, known as the Igago Crossing, turned Ieyasu into a lifelong believer in ninja effectiveness. Years later, during the siege of Osaka Castle in 1614-1615, ninja proved their worth again in Japan's final great conflict. Osaka Castle, one of the largest and most formidable fortifications in Japanese history, housed Tokugawa Ieyasu's enemies led by Toyotomi Hideyori. Rather than waste thousands of lives in direct assault, Ieyasu employed ninja for intelligence gathering and psychological warfare. They infiltrated the castle repeatedly, mapping defenses, identifying food storage locations, and spreading rumors that sowed discord among the defenders. Some reports suggest ninja sabotaged wells, poisoned food supplies, and assassinated key commanders, though these accounts remain disputed. What isn't disputed is that the siege succeeded partly because Ieyasu possessed detailed intelligence about castle weaknesses that could only have come from infiltrators. Not all ninja operations involved infiltration. Some of the deadliest work happened in open battlefields, though their role remained invisible. Ninja served as advanced scouts, traveling ahead of armies to assess terrain, locate water sources, and identify ambush sites. They gathered intelligence on enemy troop movements, supply lines, and morale by posing as travelers, merchants, or refugees fleeing the conflict. This information allowed commanders to make strategic decisions with near-perfect knowledge of enemy positions, while their opponents fought blind. During the Battle of Sekigahara in 1600, arguably the most important battle in Japanese history, ninja intelligence networks gave Tokugawa Ieyasu a decisive advantage. While his opponent Ishida Mitsunari relied on conventional scouts and messengers, Ieyasu's ninja provided real-time intelligence about troop positions, wavering alliances, and potential defectors. Some historians argue that ninja communications helped Ieyasu coordinate the critical betrayals that turned the battle in his favor, though direct evidence remains circumstantial. What's certain is that Ieyasu entered that battle with information his enemy lacked, and he walked away as de facto ruler of Japan. Less celebrated but equally important were the countless small operations that never made historical chronicles. Ninja destroyed bridges before enemy armies could cross them, contaminated water supplies forcing opponents to detour, intercepted messengers carrying critical orders, and spread false information that led entire battalions into ambushes. These weren't the heroic battlefield charges that samurai poets celebrated, but they were devastatingly effective. Yet all these victories, all these successful operations, all this accumulated influence began to fade as the wars ended. When Tokugawa Ieyasu finally established peace across Japan, the very skills that made ninja invaluable in wartime became dangerous in peacetime. The shogunate didn't need shadow warriors anymore. It needed order, stability, and control. The question wasn't whether ninja could survive peace, it was whether peace could survive the ninja, or whether these warriors, forged in centuries of conflict, would become the very threat the new government feared most. Peace, it turned out, was deadlier than any sword. When Tokugawa Ieyasu finally unified Japan in 1603 and established the Edo shogunate, the longest period of internal peace in Japanese history began. For the first time in centuries, armies stood down, castles stopped burning, and the constant warfare that had defined Japan for generations finally ended. It should have been a victory for everyone, but for the ninja, peace was a death sentence. The profession that had made them invaluable simply ceased to exist. Feudal lords no longer needed intelligence on rival territories because there were no more rivals to spy on. Sabotage operations became unnecessary when there were no enemy supply lines to disrupt. Assassination contracts dried up as the rigid social hierarchy of the Edo period made political murder both less effective and more dangerous to orchestrate. The skills that had taken generations to develop, the techniques passed down through centuries, the hard-won expertise that had changed the course of wars, all of it became obsolete almost overnight. Some ninja found employment with the Tokugawa government itself, which recognized that certain specialized skills remained useful even in peacetime. Tokugawa Ieyasu settled around 200 Iga ninja in the Yotsuya neighborhood of Edo, now Tokyo, and employed them as guards for Edo Castle and as part of an elite security force called the Oniwabanshu, the Garden Keepers. These Garden Keepers were actually intelligence officers who monitored potential threats to the shogunate, investigated rumors of rebellion, and kept watch over the various daimyo who might harbor ambitions of overthrowing Tokugawa rule. But this was a fraction of the ninja population, and the work was nothing like the missions that had defined their clans. Instead of infiltrating enemy castles, they now conducted domestic surveillance. Instead of sabotaging armies, they investigated merchants and monitored travelers. The legendary Hattori Hanzo, perhaps the most famous ninja in Japanese history and one of Tokugawa Ieyasu's most trusted operatives during the Warring States period, found himself organizing what amounted to a secret police force rather than leading covert military operations. For most ninja families, however, there was no government employment waiting. They faced impossible choices: find new professions in a society that viewed them with suspicion and contempt, or continue practicing skills that had no legitimate purpose anymore. The social stigma was crushing. Ninja had never enjoyed the honor accorded to samurai, but during wartime their utility had provided a measure of protection. In peacetime they were simply criminals, assassins, spies, and infiltrators, whose very existence threatened the social order the Tokugawa shogunate worked so hard to establish. The government made their position clear through economic warfare. Former ninja communities found themselves subjected to exorbitant tax rates that made farming their ancestral lands economically impossible. They faced systematic persecution and legal discrimination that pushed them further to society's margins. Some families abandoned their ninja heritage entirely, destroying their training scrolls and pretending their ancestors had been simple farmers or craftsmen. Others tried to preserve their knowledge by transitioning into related but more acceptable professions: martial arts instructors, bodyguards, or practitioners of traditional medicine who understood poisons well enough to also understand antidotes. A few chose resistance. When Hattori Hanzo died in 1596, his successor Iwami Hattori struggled to maintain control over the increasingly restless ninja under government employ. Some ninja refused to accept their reduced status and rebelled against the shogunate itself. These rebellions were crushed with brutal efficiency, further cementing ninja reputation as dangerous outlaws rather than skilled professionals. After one particularly troublesome uprising, the shogun dismissed many ninja from government service entirely, deciding that even the limited security benefits they provided weren't worth the risk of maintaining a trained force of infiltrators and assassins during an era supposedly defined by peace and stability. By the mid-1600s, organized ninja clans had largely dissolved. The knowledge that remained existed in scattered form: a few training manuals hidden in family archives, oral traditions passed down with decreasing accuracy, techniques preserved by martial arts schools that removed the context of their original applications. The legendary mountain strongholds of Iga and Koga became ordinary farming communities where children grew up never knowing their grandparents had once been Japan's most feared covert operatives. By the 18th century, authentic ninjutsu as a coherent martial tradition had essentially vanished. The last remnants of organized ninja clans had dissipated, absorbed into other professions, or simply erased by time and deliberate forgetting. The skills, the techniques, the hard-earned expertise of centuries, all fading like shadows at noon. But shadows have a strange way of returning. And sometimes when the original substance fades, the shadow grows darker, stranger, and far more powerful than what once cast it. Because while the real ninja were dying out, something else was being born in their place, something that would prove far more immortal than any flesh and blood warrior. The question was no longer who the ninja were, it was who they were becoming. Something strange happened as the real ninja faded from history. The stories grew darker, more fantastic, more impossible. By the late Edo period, when actual ninja had largely disappeared, their mythical counterparts had become more powerful than any living operative had ever been. The transformation from skilled human to supernatural being didn't happen by accident. It was cultivated, embellished, and eventually believed by generations who had never encountered a real ninja. The seeds of mythology had existed even during the ninja's active years. Some legends claimed ninja descended from Tengu, the bird demons of Japanese folklore, long-nosed winged creatures who inhabited mountain peaks and possessed mastery over swordsmanship and the art of vanishing. These beings, depicted as tall, strong men with elongated noses resembling beaks, were cunning deceivers who created elaborate stories to fool people, making the connection to ninja almost inevitable. Other myths suggested ninja origins lay with Chinese mystic cults who brought martial knowledge to Japan and became feared as master spies and assassins. But the real explosion of supernatural ninja mythology began precisely when actual ninja stopped being a present danger and became a safe memory. During the peaceful Edo period, unemployed ninja and their descendants began producing manuscripts explaining their techniques, weapons, and training methods. These documents, intended to preserve vanishing knowledge, had an unintended consequence. They became source material for popular entertainment that exaggerated every detail beyond recognition. Theater, particularly kabuki, embraced ninja characters with enthusiasm. On stage, ninja didn't just move silently, they became invisible at will. They didn't just use smoke bombs for distraction, they literally vanished into thin air. Stage productions featured ninja walking on water, scaling vertical walls without equipment, transforming into animals, and wielding supernatural powers over natural elements. The theatrical conventions that represented these abilities, trapdoors for sudden disappearances, wirework for impossible leaps, elaborate costumes for transformation scenes, became so associated with ninja that audiences began believing the techniques were real rather than stagecraft. Popular literature amplified these myths further. Stories depicted ninja practicing kuji-kiri, a hand sign system supposedly allowing them to focus supernatural power or control elements like fire, wind, water, earth, and lightning. What had been simple meditation or mnemonic techniques in actual practice became magical incantations in fiction. Books described ninja achieving tonko jutsu, the art of escape and concealment, as literal invisibility rather than skilled camouflage and misdirection. Tales claimed ninja could hold their breath for hours, survive impossible falls, sense danger through supernatural awareness, and even control minds through mystical techniques. The cultural shift was profound. To many Japanese during the Edo period and beyond, ninja weren't human warriors with specialized training. They were demons, supernatural entities that existed somewhere between the mortal and spirit worlds. Their historical association with mountain regions reinforced this perception, as mountains in Japanese folklore were traditionally homes to spirits, ghosts, and otherworldly beings. The fact that real ninja had deliberately encouraged fear and supernatural reputation during their active years made the transition to pure myth almost seamless. Different regions developed their own ninja folklore. Some stories portrayed ninja as tragic figures, warriors who had sacrificed their humanity for power and were condemned to live in shadows. Others depicted them as trickster spirits who tested samurai honor and punished corruption. Still others transformed them into romantic anti-heroes, rebels fighting against oppression with abilities that transcended normal human limits. Each retelling added new layers, new powers, new impossibilities. By the late 19th century, when Japan began opening to the West, the ninja that foreigners encountered in Japanese literature bore almost no resemblance to the historical operatives who had served feudal lords centuries earlier. These mythical ninja had become something uniquely Japanese, cultural icons representing mystery, danger, and the exotic appeal of a feudal past that was rapidly modernizing away. They were warriors who could do anything, bound by no physical laws, limited only by storytellers' imaginations. The irony was perfect. Real ninja had worked their entire lives to remain invisible, to complete missions without being seen or remembered. Now, long after they'd succeeded in vanishing from history, their mythical counterparts had become impossible to ignore. The shadows they'd once occupied had grown large enough to eclipse the sun, but the transformation wasn't complete. Because hidden in temple archives and family collections, a different kind of ninja legacy survived. Not in stories or stage performances, but in written texts that documented actual techniques, philosophies, and methods. These secret scrolls would eventually reveal something more valuable than any legend: the truth about what ninja really knew and how they thought about their deadly craft. The question was whether anyone would believe the reality when the myth had become so much more appealing. After centuries operating in silence, the ninja left behind more than rumors and legends. Hidden from the public and only rarely copied or discussed openly, 3 major texts became the backbone of our historical knowledge about their real practices: the Bansenshukai, the Shoninki, and the Ninpiden. These were not mere manuals of violence, but encyclopedias of espionage, philosophy, and human nature, the true science of shadow. The Bansenshukai, written in 1676 by Fujibayashi Yasutake of the Iga school, is the largest and most detailed of these works. Its title, often translated as 10,000 Rivers Flow to the Sea, captures its ambition to collect all the wisdom, techniques, and philosophy of ninja arts into a single unified text. Organized into 10 volumes, the Bansenshukai covers everything from disguise to astrology, from codes of conduct and mental discipline to the secret tools and equipment of espionage. One of its most striking revelations is how little emphasis the text places on combat technique. The Bansenshukai is not a fighting manual. Instead, it dedicates most of its pages to methods for gathering intelligence, infiltrating enemy strongholds, transmitting secret messages, reading character and intention, and understanding the balance of yin and yang, a worldview grounded in flexibility and adaptation. There are entire chapters on how to look unremarkable, how to hide in plain sight, and how to create and control rumors for psychological advantage. Only a fraction of the scroll deals with weapons or violence, and even then, weapons are always described as tools to serve the larger mission, never as ends in themselves. The Shoninki, written in 1682 by Hattori Masatake from Kishu province, is a more succinct but equally revealing document. Translated as The True Path of Ninja, it divides the art into 3 parts: ways of the mind, ways of appearance, and ways of action. The Shoninki details methods for entering enemy houses undetected, forging documents, reading people's thoughts by their facial expressions and gestures, and using subtle cues, smells, sounds, even shifts in temperature, to anticipate danger or opportunity. It provides practical tips on disguise, use of passwords, and creation of credible covers. And, like the Bansenshukai, it places enormous emphasis on loyalty, discipline, and the moral qualities required for a ninja to succeed. Perhaps most surprisingly, both manuals openly warn against the use of violence as a first resort. They emphasize that the best ninja achieves results without being noticed, and that the greatest victory is one that avoids open conflict. A true operative, these texts suggest, should value cleverness, self-control, and discretion above all else. Fighting is considered a mark of failure, a last resort when every better solution has slipped away. The Ninpiden, or Secret Traditions of the Ninja, is the oldest of the major scrolls, attributed to Hattori Hanzo in the mid-17th century. While not as expansive as the Bansenshukai, it focuses more on practical information, the construction and use of espionage equipment, recipes for stealthy movement, and the strategic placement of informants within enemy territory. It describes secret communication methods, codes, disguises, and the use of poisons, but like the other texts, leaves out any detailed instruction in hand-to-hand combat or mystical superpowers. Strikingly, absent from all these texts are any references to supernatural abilities. There is no instruction for walking on water, becoming invisible, or casting magical spells. The myths of the kabuki theater and popular fiction developed after the time these scrolls were written. Instead, the scrolls reveal an obsessive interest in psychology, behavioral observation, everyday chemistry, and the best ways to disappear when things went wrong. Yet the scrolls are not cold manuals of technique. They reflect a deep philosophy, a belief in the unity of mind and matter, in the necessity of adapting constantly to unpredictable situations, in the idea that one person, properly prepared, could change the course of history while remaining unknown. To master their craft was not just to manipulate shadows, but to dwell within them, always at the edge of sight and understanding. But as the centuries passed, these scrolls themselves became fuel for new legends. Scholars, martial artists, and storytellers debated their secrets, searching for hidden meanings, lost techniques, or proof that the supernatural ninja legends might be true after all. And even now, locked in museums and private collections, these delicate sheets of ink and parchment whisper of things still unknown, of missions never revealed, of knowledge that will never see daylight. What secrets were left between the lines, waiting for a careful eye? Maybe some shadows are so deep that even history cannot penetrate them. For most of the 20th century, the ninja existed only as ghosts, folklore characters in stories, shadows in old theater plays, and increasingly protagonists in children's adventures. The actual techniques, philosophies, and knowledge had scattered to the winds. But something unexpected happened as Japan modernized and opened to the world. The ninja began returning, not as warriors, but as cultural ambassadors, tourist attractions, and symbols of a past that refused to stay buried. The modern revival began quietly in the martial arts world during the mid-20th century. A handful of practitioners claimed lineage to historical ninja schools, most notably Masaki Hatsumi, who founded the Bujinkan organization in 1970 and claimed to teach authentic techniques passed down through generations from the Togakure-ryu school of ninjutsu. Whether these lineages were genuine or reconstructions based on historical scrolls remains hotly debated among historians and martial artists. What's undeniable is that Hatsumi and others like him sparked global interest in ninjutsu as a living martial art, rather than a dead historical curiosity. By the 1980s, ninja training halls had appeared across Japan, Europe, and North America, teaching modern interpretations of historical techniques mixed with contemporary self-defense methods. These schools attracted students fascinated by ninja mythology, but also serious martial artists seeking practical combat skills outside traditional karate or judo frameworks. The authenticity varied wildly. Some instructors conducted serious historical research and consulted original scrolls like the Bansenshukai, while others simply capitalized on popular ninja imagery with little connection to actual historical practice. But the most visible ninja revival happened not in training halls but in tourist destinations. The regions of Iga in Mie Prefecture and Koga in Shiga Prefecture, the historical heartlands of ninja clans, recognized that their shadowy heritage could become economic gold. Aiga, birthplace of legendary ninja like Hattori Hanzo, transformed itself into a ninja tourism mecca. The Iga-ryu Ninja Museum opened in the 1960s, offering visitors the chance to explore an authentic ninja residence, complete with hidden rooms, escape hatches, rotating walls, and concealed weapon storage. Performers dressed in black ninja costumes demonstrate historical weapons like shuriken, kusarigama, and blowguns in theatrical presentations that blur the line between education and entertainment. Visitors can dress in ninja outfits, practice throwing shuriken at targets, and navigate obstacle courses designed to mimic ninja training. Koga followed a similar path with the Koga Ninja Village, a theme park where families can experience ninja life through interactive exhibits and challenges. Here, children walk on water using special floating platforms, climb walls with traditional climbing equipment, and test their stealth by sneaking past motion sensors. It's part historical recreation, part amusement park, and entirely focused on keeping ninja culture alive through engagement rather than pure scholarship. Tokyo joined the trend with multiple ninja-themed museums catering to international tourists. The Samurai and Ninja Museum in Shinjuku offers guided tours in multiple languages, sword-fighting demonstrations, and photo opportunities with replica armor and weapons. These urban museums recognize that most visitors want accessible, entertaining experiences rather than academic deep dives into feudal espionage techniques. The phenomenon expanded beyond Japan as well. Ninja-themed tourist experiences appeared worldwide, from ninja restaurants in New York to martial arts demonstrations in European cultural centers. The image of the ninja, now thoroughly divorced from historical reality, became a globally recognized symbol of Japanese culture alongside samurai, geisha, and Mount Fuji. Yet, beneath the commercialization, something legitimate was happening. Historians began seriously studying the surviving scrolls, conducting archaeological investigations of historical ninja sites, and separating documented facts from accumulated myths. Museums created scholarly exhibitions alongside tourist attractions. Universities offered courses examining ninja in their proper historical context. The Japanese government designated certain ninja sites as cultural heritage locations worthy of preservation. Some towns even began hiring professional ninjas for promotional work, performers who studied historical texts, trained in traditional weapons, and served as both entertainers and educators at festivals and cultural events. In 2016, Iga City famously advertised for 6 ninja positions, attracting hundreds of applicants willing to dress in traditional costume and perform for tourists while promoting local heritage. The modern ninja had become something their historical predecessors never were: visible, celebrated, and eager to share their secrets. Where once ninja fought to remain unknown, their descendants now fought to be remembered. The shadows they once occupied had been replaced by spotlights, museum displays, and selfie opportunities. But this cultural resurrection posed an uncomfortable question. Was this revival preserving ninja heritage, or creating a new mythology as disconnected from truth as the supernatural tales of the Edo period? And as ninja culture spread globally through movies, video games, and pop culture, would the real history disappear completely beneath layers of entertaining fiction? Because the ninja's greatest conquest wasn't happening in Japan. It was happening in Hollywood. When Western audiences first encountered ninja in the late 1960s, they had no cultural context for understanding what they were seeing. The result was spectacular misunderstanding that transformed Japanese covert operatives into something entirely new, a fusion of Asian mysticism, Western superhero tropes, and pure imagination that would eventually eclipse the historical reality so completely that even Japanese popular culture began adopting the Western version. The first major Western exposure came through James Bond films. You Only Live Twice in 1967 featured ninja as exotic warriors in the service of Japanese allies, dressed in black, scaling walls, and fighting with throwing stars. For most Western viewers, this was their introduction to ninja, not as historical figures but as cinematic spectacle, mysterious Asian warriors whose abilities seemed almost supernatural compared to ordinary soldiers. The image stuck. Ninja wore all black, threw shuriken with impossible accuracy, and possessed fighting skills that made them nearly invincible. The 1980s detonated ninja fever across American pop culture, a flood of low-budget action films featuring American martial artists dressed as ninja flooded video rental stores, each more absurd than the last. These movies abandoned any pretense of historical accuracy, depicting ninja with magical powers, superhuman abilities, and costumes that would have made stealth impossible. Titles like Enter the Ninja, Revenge of the Ninja, and Ninja 3, The Domination, created an entire B-movie genre where ninja could do literally anything the plot required: possess people, shoot laser beams, teleport, or fight, while dressed in bright colors that defeated the entire purpose of stealth. But ninja's most successful Western incarnation came through comics and animation. Marvel Comics introduced Elektra and the Hand, a ninja assassin organization, into the Daredevil universe, transforming ninja into supernatural martial arts death cults. These weren't scouts or spies. They were mystical warriors who could be resurrected after death, possessed superhuman abilities, and served ancient demonic powers. DC Comics followed with characters like Katana and various League of Assassins members, further cementing ninja as fantasy warriors rather than historical figures. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, created in 1984, took the transformation to its logical extreme. 4 mutant turtles trained in ninjutsu by a mutant rat fought crime in New York City while eating pizza and spouting catchphrases. The franchise became a global phenomenon, introducing millions of children to ninja as cartoon superheroes who bore no resemblance whatsoever to historical shinobi. For an entire generation, this absurdist parody became the definitive ninja experience. Video games amplified ninja mythology through interactive fantasy. Ninja Gaiden, released in 1988, featured a ninja protagonist with supernatural abilities fighting demons and dragons. Mortal Kombat introduced Scorpion and Sub-Zero, ninja characters who could teleport, shoot ice projectiles, and pull opponents across the screen with magical spears. Naruto, though Japanese in origin, absorbed so much Western ninja mythology that it featured teenage ninja using magical hand signs to summon giant animals, control elements, and perform techniques that would have baffled any historical shinobi. The Hollywood ninja evolved distinct characteristics that became universal across media. They wore all-black outfits, historically inaccurate since real ninja dressed to blend with their environment, not stand out. They possessed superhuman acrobatic abilities, performing impossible flips and wall runs. They threw unlimited quantities of perfectly accurate shuriken that apparently never ran out. They could disappear in puffs of smoke, walk on water, and sense danger through mystical awareness. Ironically, this Western mythology eventually flowed back to Japan, influencing how Japanese creators depicted ninja in modern media. Anime and manga began incorporating Western ninja tropes: flashy costumes, elemental magic, and superhuman abilities, creating a feedback loop where East and West continuously amplified each other's fantasies. Modern Japanese ninja media often looks nothing like historical depictions from the Edo period. The cultural impact became immeasurable. Ninja Halloween costumes outsold pirate and vampire costumes in many years. Ninja became an adjective meaning stealthy or awesome in Western slang. Ninja marketing, ninja moves, ninja skills. Companies used ninja imagery to sell everything from blenders to insurance. The word transcended its origins entirely, becoming a free-floating symbol of mystery, competence, and cool efficiency. Yet buried beneath decades of pop culture fantasy, a question remained unanswered. After all the movies, games, comics, and myths, after centuries of exaggeration, fabrication, and cultural telephone, what actually remained true about ninja? Could the historical reality still be recovered, or had it been permanently buried beneath layers of entertaining fiction? And more importantly, why did we prefer the fantasy so much more than the truth? What made fictional ninja more appealing than the documented history of skilled but entirely human covert operatives? The answer to that question might reveal more about us than it does about feudal Japanese spies. Because in the final accounting, when fiction and fact stand side by side, which shadow do we choose to follow? After hours of journeying through centuries, wars, myths, and movies, we arrive at the question that matters most: what was real? Strip away the Hollywood fantasies, the supernatural folklore, the tourist attractions, and the video game abilities. What actually remains when we separate documented history from accumulated fiction? The truth is simpler and stranger than either extreme suggests. Ninja were real. Historical documents confirm their existence, particularly in the Iga and Koga regions during Japan's Sangoku period from roughly 1400 to 1600. They weren't mythical beings or superhuman warriors, but specialized operatives trained in espionage, infiltration, sabotage, and guerrilla warfare. They served feudal lords who needed intelligence gathering and covert operations that samurai codes of honor forbade. But here's where reality diverges sharply from popular belief. Ninja weren't a separate social class eternally at war with samurai. Many ninja actually came from the samurai class themselves. Hattori Hanzo, perhaps the most famous ninja in history, was both samurai and shinobi. The relationship between ninja and samurai wasn't opposition, but collaboration. Samurai employed ninja to do work that honor codes prevented them from doing directly. They didn't wear all-black costumes. That's pure theater invention. Real ninja dressed to blend with their environment and circumstances. Farmers' clothes, merchant robes, monk garments, whatever made them invisible in context. The iconic black outfit came from kabuki theater stagehands who wore black and were considered invisible by theatrical convention. Their weapons were practical, not exotic. Shuriken existed, but were distraction tools, not primary weapons. Most ninja tools were repurposed farming implements or everyday items that wouldn't arouse suspicion. Sickles, climbing spikes, ropes, bamboo tubes. Poison was used, but more often to contaminate food supplies than coat blades. The elaborate weapon arsenals of movies are fantasy. They couldn't walk on water, turn invisible, or use magic. Every supposed supernatural ability has a mundane explanation. Walking on water referred to using floating devices or wading through shallow areas. Invisibility meant skilled camouflage and misdirection. Reading minds was acute observation of body language and psychology. The ninja themselves sometimes encouraged supernatural myths as psychological warfare, but they knew the truth. Their power came from training, not mysticism. Assassination was far less common than espionage. Most ninja work involved gathering intelligence, mapping defenses, intercepting messages, spreading misinformation, and sabotaging supplies. The scrolls like Bansenshukai emphasize avoiding violence whenever possible. A ninja who had to fight had usually already failed their mission. They didn't work alone as lone wolves. Ninja operated as organized clans with hierarchies, training programs, and support networks. Operations were planned carefully, with intelligence gathered beforehand and escape routes prepared. The solitary ninja assassin is Hollywood invention, and they definitely didn't survive into modern times as active covert operatives. By 1600, when Tokugawa unified Japan, the ninja's military functions ceased. Some found government work with the Tokugawa shogunate, but this was domestic security, not the covert warfare that defined them. By the 18th century, organized ninja clans had dissolved completely. Claims of unbroken lineages passing down authentic techniques are disputed by most historians. So why did the myth become so much more powerful than the reality? Perhaps because we needed ninja to be supernatural. A skilled human spy who gathers information and occasionally stabs someone isn't as compelling as a shadow warrior with mystical powers who can do the impossible. The real ninja were remarkable for their discipline, psychology, and pragmatism, but those qualities don't translate well to entertainment. The historical ninja achieved something extraordinary without any magic at all. They were commoners and minor samurai who, through intelligence and training, made themselves indispensable to the most powerful warlords in Japan. They influenced major battles, saved political leaders, and helped shape the outcome of Japan's unification, all while remaining largely invisible to history. The tragedy is that their actual accomplishments, achieved through entirely human means, have been buried beneath centuries of fantasy. We've traded documented courage for imaginary superpowers, real strategic brilliance for fictional mysticism, and historical significance for entertaining myth. But perhaps that's the final lesson the ninja teach us. They understood that what people believe often matters more than what's true. They wielded perception as a weapon, and in doing so created a legend that outlived them by centuries. The real ninja are gone, but the shadow they cast has become immortal, and maybe, just maybe, that's exactly what they would have wanted. And so we reach the end of our journey through centuries across battlefields and movie screens, from mountain fortresses to museum exhibits. We've traced the ninja from their violent birth in feudal chaos to their peaceful death in the Edo period, and then witnessed their spectacular resurrection as cultural icons more powerful than they ever were as living warriors. The historical ninja are gone. The last true practitioners died generations ago, their techniques scattered or forgotten, their secret scrolls locked in archives. But the myth, the glorious, impossible, supernatural myth, has achieved something no flesh and blood operative ever could: true immortality. Today, Ninja live everywhere and nowhere. They hide in video games where teenagers summon dragons with hand signs. They leap across movie screens, defying gravity and logic with equal ease. They sell products, inspire Halloween costumes, and populate the collective imagination of billions who will never set foot in Iga or read the Bansenshukai. The shadow they cast has grown larger than any substance could support, a legend, fed by centuries of embellishment, misunderstanding, and pure creative joy. Perhaps the ninja themselves would appreciate the irony. They spent their lives trying to be invisible, to complete missions without leaving traces, to influence history from the margins. They succeeded so completely that they vanished from history entirely, only to return as something far more visible, far more influential, and far more enduring than any mortal warrior could ever be. The ninja will never die, not because their techniques survived, but because we need them. Need the fantasy of warriors who can do the impossible, who move in shadows, who prove that intelligence and skill can defeat raw power. The myth serves us better than the truth ever could. And in that final paradox, the ninja achieved their ultimate victory. They became immortal by becoming invisible. They conquered the world by disappearing from it. Before you go, I need 3 final things from you. First, hit that subscribe button if you found value in this deep dive into history's most mysterious warriors. We're committed to bringing you more long-form documentaries that separate fact from fiction. Second, leave a like if you appreciated the journey from reality to myth. Your support tells us that real history matters, even when the legends are more entertaining. Third, drop a comment telling me which surprised you more, the historical truth about ninja, or how completely the myth replaced it. Let's discuss in the comments below. The shadows may be immortal, but your engagement keeps this channel alive. Until next time, keep questioning the legends.